In the last episode of Metric's Dungeon, adventurers Eduardo and Winston decide to take one more pass at Olaf's remaining goods, finding a third set of armor, intended for a mage. With all their newfound weapons, they seek the knowledge of Dolan, a mute dwarven blacksmith. Upon showing them a strange-looking axe, Elena, his wife, signs for the pair and relays that a dwarf more attuned with magic would know of a burn weapon such as this. Heading back to the inn to claim the reward for clearing the abandoned farm, they overhear a loud conversation upstairs. It is Parthen and a group of mercenaries having some sort of meeting. Parthen excitedly waves them over. Eduardo thinks he notices something behind the barrels. I will have a glance.
Oh, what's that? What's that little guy?
I didn't see anything, Eduardo. What did you see?
There may or may not be one of those in every level since we started, and this is the first time someone's noticed.
Oh my god.
Silly Eduardo, there's nothing there. The duo show Parthen the axe, hoping to learn more of its past. Parthen's demeanor changes immediately. They haven't seen him like this before. He takes the axe, demanding to know where they found it. It turns out that the axe belonged to his son. Winston successfully persuades Parthen to open up about his son's past. Parthen spills that his son should have known better than to work with Olaf, and just because he runs the markets of Nazul doesn't mean he can do whatever he wants. Realizing he said too much, Parthen invites the duo to join him in Nazul when they are ready. The pair meet with Robin to receive payment for clearing the farm. Winston sets the table as the pair accept their payment. After setting the table multiple times, Lauren, a companion of Robin, gives them a grave task. Retrieve her daughter's coffin and return it to her. The pair accept. The duo head off to the surgery to talk to Cavail, an ancient elf that seemed to really have it in for Winston. Upon entering the surgery, they hear drunken talking near the fireplace. It is Lummus. He is alive! A shadow of his former self, missing an eye and sipping on ale, he seems content to keep to himself. Whilst Winston joins Ferdinand, who is feeling further sad, and Lummus for a drink, Eduardo makes a plausible excuse and heads off for Ferdinand's belongings. Eduardo is returning from his pilfer party when he hears a clicking in his head, then a voice. "Keep to yourself, youngling." It is Cavail. He beckons Eduardo to meet him in the surgery alone, instructing him not to bring the Ashen One. Is Winston the Ashen One? What does this mean? As Eduardo enters the surgery alone, the ancient elf Cavail approaches him and holds his hand to the back of his head, flooding Eduardo's mind with visions of a maelstrom of flame and terror and the burning of the Mother Tree. The crime that Cavail holds Winston responsible for, even though he was but a child. The sentence? Death. Cavail tells Eduardo to bring Winston in. As Winston walks into the surgery, he resists a sense of intestinal dread. If it weren't for his strong constitution, he may not have survived the pain. Cavail is visibly shocked that Winston is still standing. Nobody talks about what just happened, and Winston is none the wiser as he wasn't present for Eduardo and Cavail's secret chat. Quickly moving on, Cavail enlightens the duos of the true nature of the undead danger lurking in the woods. Eduardo manages to identify a dreadfully powerful staff, and Winston deciphers an inscription along the staff's shaft. It reads, "To turn the enemy's own hand against them." Overwhelmed by all he has just learned, Eduardo haphazardly hatches a plan to open a lock sterilization unit, and in doing so incurs the wrath of Cavail. If not for Eduardo's swift confession, Winston would surely be dead. The two leave immediately, as they have clearly overstayed their welcome. After hastily leaving Balar for the Utara camp, Winston begins questioning Eduardo about what had transpired, only to be interrupted by a cursed corpse they had left behind earlier in their journey. Penelope, a Utara scout they assisted earlier, leapt to their defense, and together they quickly dispatched the condemned elf and his wolves. You can almost hear the weeping of 3 children as the body falls to the ground. Having bested the monsters, they receive an invitation to camp from Penelope. Before the party continues, Winston asks Eduardo to continue their discussion about the crimes for which Winston is being held responsible. Eduardo explains what he was told by Cavail. Winston is the Ashen One. Between the pair, it is thought that divine intervention may be the only thing ever heard of that could cleanse the ash from the descendants of those who defile a Mother Tree. As Penelope guides the party through the Utara camp, she introduces them to the archivist before moving on to the commander. They notice the coffin they are tasked to retrieve for Lauren, but now is not the time to complete this task. Winston and Eduardo are introduced to the troop's commander and given an opportunity too good to pass up: earn a handsome wage and liberate Harran, a port of slavers. Eduardo's keen eyes alerted Winston to the fact that the sigils on the Utara commander's armor was identical to the House Goran, his mother's maiden house. Intrigued by this revelation, Winston pressed the commander on the origins of her mercenaries and the weapons she was carrying, using his amazing persuasive abilities. A battle of wits ensues.
Y'all ready for this?
Winston is successful, resulting in the revelation that he was in fact a Yatara in the making. And this is where our adventurers are. What happens next? Find out this week on Metrix Dungeon.